Good morning. Very good morning to ladies and gentlemen. Cosmos Foundation is privileged to host yet another roundtable under our Ambassadors Lecture Series. Today's event, which will focus on the ever-growing relationship between Bangladesh and China, has been in the burner for a while. We have been planning it since Ambassador Li Jiming's memorable visit to our Cosmos Center early last year. Unfortunately, pandemic stood in the way of our project, so we have decided to go virtual because this is too important of a subject to be kept waiting any longer. We are deeply beholden to Ambassador Li Jiming, a great and true friend of Bangladesh, for agreeing to deliver the keynote. I would also like to thank our distinguished discussants, Ambassador Tariq Karim, Ambassador Shamsher Mobin Chowdhury, Ambassador Sirajul Islam, Dr. Debopriyo Bhattacharya, Dr. Rashid Al Mahmoud Titumir, Zhou Yingmeng, Dr. Ning Sheng Nan. The story of the relationship between China and Bangladesh goes back deep into history. All of us are aware of the travel to China by Dipankar Srigayan 2 millennia ago. So one reason for the warmth of our current relationship is that they are deeply rooted in history. Another is, even in the present times, our two peoples perceive a commonality in our destiny, which we see as intertwined. The trip to China of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of our nation, as a young politician in mid 1950s, remain indelibly etched in our minds. It always amuses me when it is said that Bangladesh and China are moving closer together as friends on the international stage. While this may be true to some extent in the context of modern nation states, the sheer volume and breadth of contracts between the two peoples cover a vast terrain in history that's often overlooked. Many years ago, I have had the privilege of interviewing present Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Beijing. It was in 2004 when he was the Vice Foreign Minister. One of the pearls of wisdom that Wang Yi told me during that interview was that China's basic policy is to look at history as a mirror to move forward. The truth is, our ties are civilizational, and I urge stakeholders on both sides to do all they can to bring forward a full range of their relationship. Bangladesh, or Manjala as the Chinese refer to it, was a prominent location on both the two sides of ancient Silk Roads, maritime and overland. That they acted as the inspiration for today's Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing's grand vision for a trade route connecting three continents that has been described as its Marshall Plan for the 21st century. Bangladesh, of course, is very much a part of the BRI, which hold out enormous promise for enhancing the country's connectivity with nations far and near. Even before that, the Chinese were involved in financing and helping to build some of the most important mega projects in the country, including Padda Bridge, Karnafuli Tunnel, and also the longest SPM, and many other projects. During Xi's visit, more than 20 agreements were signed by the two sides for further cooperation on a number of projects. Yet the most significant outcome of that visit in 2016 was that of the two countries agreed to elevate the bilateral relationship to a strategic partnership. It is within the ambit of that elevated status that the present relations between Dhaka and Beijing must be viewed. Bilateral trade, which has crossed the $1 billion mark for the first time when I interviewed Wang Yi in 2004, rose exponentially to 12.4 billion in 2018 and was expected by economists to reach 18 billion by 2021. Although this may have been halted by the pandemic that has blighted economic performance in both 2020 and 2021, China does still remain Bangladesh's number one trading partner. Since initiating market-based reforms in 1978, China has witnessed what the World Bank terms the fastest sustained expansion by a major economy in history that has seen more than 850 million people lifted out of poverty. According to David Mann, global chief economist at Standard Chartered Bank, even though the rate of growth of China has eased in recent years, even relatively sedate growth of 6% will still make it the most powerful engine of world economic growth. It is a great source of pride and happiness to Bangladeshis as they see China's rise in the global scene. We know that the Chinese people have a dream. So do we in Bangladesh as we endeavor to achieve our goal of a middle income status. It is my firm conviction that our aspirations will find fulfillment if we seek through our bilateral cooperation. It is my hope that through our deliberations today, we will seek ways and means of enhancing our collaboration on a win-win basis. With these few words, I shall now hand over the microphone to the chair of our roundtable, Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Chaudhry, the scholar diplomat, former foreign affairs advisor, and currently the president of Cosmos Foundation. Over to Ambassador Chaudhry.
Thank you, Inayat, and welcome everyone. Many thanks, Inayat, also for setting the broad parameters of Bangladesh-China relations, which and framing, therefore, our discussions today. I would briefly focus my remarks on China itself, the implications of its phenomenal rise for the world, including Bangladesh. My location in Singapore gives me a ringside view of this remarkable development. The rise of China is perhaps the key feature of contemporary times. Already the second largest economy in the world, it is poised to become the first sooner than expected. Now, in March, China held its Liangwi, the annual parliamentary meeting, also known as two sessions. Apart from being profoundly impactful for China itself and also for the world, the two sessions released the nation's 14th five-year development plan. Now, this, as the Chinese Communist Party celebrates 100 years of its existence, for which we congratulated warmly. Over the past decade, China has lifted 100 million citizens out of poverty. President Xi Jinping has called it a miracle that will go down in history. Currently, it is employing what is called a dual circulation strategy. This entails stimulating the local demand and simultaneously catering to the export market. It is designed to improve its participation in trade, finance, and technology. At the same time, hedging against market disruptions by concentration on domestic consumption, production, and innovation. Chinese eyes are fixed on more than development and prosperity. International goodwill is being sought through its vaccine diplomacy. China is modernizing its military and expanding its capabilities in newer domains of cyber, outer space, deep sea, and the electromagnetic realm. Its remarkable advance in novel technologies, including artificial intelligence, has positioned it to leapfrog ahead of other competitors. The Chinese were demure about such progress and called it Heping Jeche, or peaceful rise. Now, even in more mellowed language, they use the expression peaceful development. However, in global politics, there is always scope for, indeed, many would say it's inevitable, friction between a rising power and the current preponderant one. This clearly renders China's relations with the United States as one of structural rivalry. Both would like to call it competition, cooperating on common goals like climate change and the pandemics, and engaging in healthy competition in others. Now, not Cold War, perhaps, but cold peace. The distinction can be thin, and both sides would need to be extremely careful so as not to fall into what is called the Thucydides trap, that is an unwitting decline to a state of conflict. The countries in Southeast Asia, Bangladesh included, would like the two major powers to avoid such a syndrome and bind themselves in a web of collaboration leading to global stability. That would be the true fruition of what Xi Jinping calls the Zhongguomeng, or China dream. That is the broad global matrix on which Bangladesh-China relations will play out. To discuss this topic, we have a very distinguished panel with Ambassador Li Zhibing providing the keynote. I've had the privilege of interacting with him and would rate him as a diplomat of impeccable caliber and credentials. It is now with great pleasure that I invite him to the microphone. Ambassador, for the next 30 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Inayatullah Khan, Chairman of Cosmos Foundation, for inviting me and giving me this wonderful opportunity. And also thank you, Dr. Iftikhar Khan Ahmed Chaudhry, President and Distinguished Fellow of Cosmos Foundation, and for your very, very warm remarks and also your insights. Well, it is truly a privilege for me to join such a stellar panel comprising of Ambassador Shamshel Mubin Chaudhry, Dr. Dibapriya Bhattacharya, Ambassador Sarajul Islam, and Ambassador Tariq Ahmed Karim, and Dr. Rashid Al Mohammed Titumir. I'm also delighted to know that two young, talented Chinese scholars, namely Dr. Ningshen Nan from China Institute of International Studies and Dr. Zhou Yingmei from Inner University, are also participating in today's program. I look forward to the discussion with you all and your valuable insights. Ladies and gentlemen, China and Bangladesh have always been friendly neighbors, with our historical and cultural exchanges traced to thousands of years back. Eminent Chinese Buddhist figures Fa Xian and Xuanzang once visited the ancient Bengal on their way to seek Buddhist scripts or Buddhist wisdoms. And their Achi Dipanka traveled to the Tibetan area of China for teaching and reviving Buddhism. Today, halves of the ashes of Atish Dipanka are enshrined respectively in Tibet and Dhaka, serving as an unbreakable bond between our two nations and two cultures. Since we established diplomatic relations 46 years ago, China, Bangladesh have treated each other with mutual respect and as equals. During the visit of President Xi Jinping to Bangladesh in 2016, our bilateral ties were upgraded to a strategic partnership of cooperation, which opened a whole new chapter for our friendship. Under the guidance of President Xi and Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, our relations have flourished and our ties have become stronger than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is no longer what it was several years back. The combined forces of changes and a pandemic, both unseen in a century, have brought the world into an age rife with challenges, but full of hopes at the same time. Things have also become different for China and Bangladesh since we established strategic partnership of cooperation in 2016. Both our countries have entered a new and crucial stage of vitalization and development. We are facing rising geopolitical tensions, yet we have also witnessed tremendous economic and social progress. The changes taken place both at home and abroad entail a stronger and more ambitious vision of our strategic partnership of cooperation. The COVID-19 pandemic still looms large, but it is no longer the overarching theme of the world. The year 2021 is a crucial juncture for both China and Bangladesh. In this remarkable year, China has, for the first time in history, eliminated extreme poverty and achieved the goal of building a Xiaokang society, which means a moderately prosperous society in all respects. Where Bangladesh has qualified for the second time for graduation from the category of LDC, making it all set to take on a new look in front of the international community in just a few years. China has adhered in the 14th five-year plan and embarked upon the new journey toward socialist modernization. While Bangladesh has approved its 8th five-year plan with targets to attain 8.51% of GDP growth and to reduce poverty rate to 15.6% within the period. China will celebrate the 100th founding anniversary of the Communist Party of China, or CPC, in less than 2 weeks, July the 1st. While Bangladesh has marked with grand success the birth centenary of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Rahman, despite the challenges posed by COVID-19. We are only in the middle of this meaningful year, yet it clearly tells us all that although a deadly virus seems not going to leave soon, the wheels of history will nonetheless roll ahead. Looking into the future, we have every reason to expect a stronger strategic partnership of cooperation between China and Bangladesh. And here are 5 areas where our efforts could be channeled toward this goal. First, we need to deepen anti-pandemic cooperation. COVID-19 has driven home to us that facing with such new and non-traditional threat, we all rise and fall together, and we have to take unprecedented actions in the battle against the pandemic. China has, while receiving support and help from many countries, including Bangladesh, mounted a massive global humanitarian operation. Notwithstanding the limited production capacity and enormous demand at home, China has provided 3.5 billion doses of vaccine to the international community, including bilateral assistance to more than 80 countries and export to 43 countries. And probably we're going to add one more, which makes the number 44. And the one more is Bangladesh. And more than 150 countries and 13 international organizations have received medical supplies, including 280 billion masks, 3.4 billion protective suits, and 4 billion testing kits from China. China is also fully implementing the G20 debt service suspension initiative for poorest countries and has so far put off debt repayment exceeding $1.3 billion, the highest deferral among all G20 members. In the recent Global Health Summit, President Xi called for building a global community of health for all by announcing that China will provide still more vaccines to the best of its ability, support its vaccine companies in technology transfer and overseas production, endorse the waiver of intellectual property rights on COVID-19 vaccines, and propose to set up an international forum on vaccine cooperation to promote fair and equitable distribution of vaccines around the world. $3 billion of new international aid will also be distributed over the next 3 years from China to support COVID-19 response and economic and social recovery in other developing countries. As the Chinese saying goes, a drop of kindness should be returned with gushing waves of gratitude. China will not forget that at the beginning, at the height of its fight against the coronavirus, Bangladesh government and the Bangladesh people donated a large quantity of medical supplies to China. And China too has done what it could to assist the COVID-19 response in Bangladesh. For example, just 6 days ago, the second batch of 600,000 doses of free vaccine arrived from China to Bangladesh. In addition to the first batch of 500,000 doses, during the latest telephone conversation between the two foreign ministers of our two countries, some new medical supplies for Bangladesh worth 5 million RMB yuan were announced by the Chinese side. Pragmatic negotiations are underway between Chinese and Bangladesh vaccine companies regarding local joint production. And many substantial progress has been made. And despite some unexpected or unfortunate mistakes, talks on commercial purchase of vaccine from China to Bangladesh are still ongoing. And according to the latest news I got yesterday, I think the deal will be concluded very, very soon. While China is determined to fulfill the commitment of President Xi, which makes China's COVID-19 vaccines a global public good, we do expect a more cooperative and congenial environment in Bangladesh for all vaccine cooperation endeavors. Second, we need to further advance the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. As the Chinese ambassador to Bangladesh, one of the proudest things for me is that Bangladesh is the first South Asian country to sign up BRI officially, which was first proposed by President Xi in year 2013. There is no doubt that closer cooperation on the BRI will strengthen our strategic partnership of cooperation. Last year, braving the huge threat of COVID-19, many Chinese managers, engineers, technicians, and skilled workers in Bangladesh choose not to leave for home, thus ensuring the steady progress of major BRI projects in Bangladesh. The Kanapali Tunnel, which the Honorable Chairman just mentioned, the first underwater tunnel project in Bangladesh, or probably the first in South Asia, has achieved a breakthrough with the completion of its left leg. The Bangbandhu Bangladesh-China Friendship Exhibition Center, so far the largest of this kind in the country, has been handed over to the government of Bangladesh. The completion of Padma Bridge, the dream bridge of Bangladesh people, as well as its railway link, is also within our reach. Statistics show that the accumulated infrastructure construction contract volume between our two countries has reached $72.6 billion by the end of year 2020. In fact, today we have another BRI project getting started, which is the project of expansion of strengthening of power system network on the DPDC area, upgrade from the traditional power grid into a smart power grid for this area. So unfortunately, I have to leave for the inauguration ceremony of the program for a short period of time during this meeting. I will ask for a leave, which is probably around 11:30 or just a brief period. And then I will come back to join you for the discussion session. This is a regret that I cannot fully listen to all of you, your valuable insights, but I think our dialogue won't be limited only to today. In the days to come, China would like to contribute more to the infrastructure development of Bangladesh with a bigger focus on clean growth and green development, according to Bangladesh's requests. We are also looking forward to explore with our Bangladesh partners in other fields, including, for example, high-speed rail, telecommunications, satellite, artificial intelligence, and so on. It is worth noting that the G7 leaders have recently proposed their version of global infrastructure development initiative, which is great, with the outspoken aim of counter BRI. Honestly speaking, I'm not worried about that. Here, I would like to make it very clear that China will not force any country to take sides. And I believe that policymakers here are wise enough to make the choices that suits the best interest of the Bangladesh people. Due to the pandemic, our bilateral trade volume was dented with 13.6% drop to $15.9 billion last year. However, the resilience and dynamism of our two economies make it reasonable to expect a huge rebound this year. Actually, according to the statistics from the China customs, our trade volume in the first month of year 2021 has reached $7.19 billion US dollars, which is a 42.9% year-on-year increase. And very, very interestingly, that during this period of time, we have witnessed a 28.1% input of China from Bangladesh. This figure is very, very encouraging. Last year, China granted 97% duty-free treatment to Bangladesh products, which is an important step toward a higher level of bilateral trade liberalization. Just 10 days ago, I attended a webinar titled Bangladesh-China Economic and Trade Relations in the Aftermath of the COVID-19 Global Pandemic, during which His Excellency Tipu Mush, the Honorable Minister of Commerce of Bangladesh, said that signing of FTA with China will help Bangladesh face LDC graduation challenges. Indeed, a more comprehensive access to China's vast domestic market will definitely put Bangladesh in a better position in its post-LDC era, with rising trade, protectionism, and unilateralism around the world. China also opted for dual circulation, a new development pattern featuring domestic and international economic circulations that complement each other. By strengthening trade connectivity on the BRI, I'm sure that Bangladesh could benefit huge from China's international economic circulation, which promotes a free flow of capital, raw material, manpower, production capacity, and technology. The third, we need to fight climate change together. Ecological advancement and conservation have been written into China's constitution. Probably that's the only country to do so. And incorporated into China's overall plan for building a socialism with Chinese characteristics. Last year, China announced that it will strive to peak carbon dioxide emission and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. While it took Western or developed countries at least 40 years to complete the same process. Bangladesh, as a climate vulnerable country, also plays active roles in the global climate agenda, as evidenced by its current chairpersonship of CVP and V20 group. Both China and Bangladesh are developing countries in a similar situation. While we are not mainly responsible for warming as it is now in history, cutting emission of climate change. Both China and Bangladesh are developing countries. Our common identity put us in a similar situation where we are not mainly responsible for the global warming as it is now and in history. Yet we disproportionately shoulder the burden of cutting emissions or suffer the most severe consequences of climate change. Therefore, our two countries should continue to support COP26 to achieve positive outcomes and adhere to the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. As the good partner of Bangladesh, China is willing to strengthen bilateral cooperation and sustainable development, share experiences and technologies on environmental protection and ecological conservation, and provide more assistance in the era of disaster mitigation and management. It is my firm conviction that through stronger South-South cooperation, we, the developing countries, will eventually find a path that well balances our needs to grow and the urgency to stem global warming. Fourth, we need to continue our efforts in resolving hotspots issues. In a world with many more new challenges, a stronger China-Bangladesh strategic partnership is indispensable to the solution of many hotspot issues around the world. The sudden change in Myanmar earlier this year caught us all by surprise and created some uncertainties over the repatriation process for the displaced Rohingya people. Right now, China is closely observing the situation in Myanmar, hoping the country could return to normal soon. We fully understand the keenness of Bangladesh to start repatriation and our determination to help the two friendly neighbors resolve this long-standing issue will never change. China will continue to serve as a bridge of communication between the two and try its best to facilitate early results. Although a ceasefire has been achieved between Palestine and Israel, a durable solution still requires efforts from all concerned parties. China believes that the Palestinian question remains at the heart of the Middle East issue and has called for more humanitarian aid to the conflict area, more international support to facilitate talks, and a two-state solution as the fundamental way to forward. China is happy to see that Bangladesh is also doing what it can to de-escalate the situation and is willing to work with countries, including Bangladesh, to solve the problem. As I have pointed out many times on other occasions, issues related to Xinjiang are not about human rights or religious freedom, as portrayed by the West, but about fighting. Attendees of this program are all well versed in international affairs, and therefore it is quite easy for you to know what is the truth. It is my sincere hope that Bangladesh, as a friendly neighbor of China and an important member of the Islamic world, could resist the poison of Western propaganda and render its righteous voice for China. Recently, we've seen some reprint of Western media report. We're happy to see that the UMB and Dhaka, Korea didn't do so. So thank you. Fifth, we need to uphold multilateralism. Multilateralism is about having international affairs addressed through consultation and the future of the world decided by everyone working together. To build small cliques or to state a new Cold War, to reject the threaten or intimidate others, to willfully impose decoupling, supplying disruption or sanctions, and to create isolation or estrangement will only push the world into division and probably even confrontation. Humanity has learned lessons the hard way, and that history is not long gone. China follows the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, while Bangladesh adheres to the idea of friendship to all and malice to none. The similarities of our foreign policy undergird our strategic partnership of cooperation and determine that China and Bangladesh will always staunch champions of multilateralism, no matter how times change. I'd like to start by giving you some counterexample of multilateralism. Recently, some countries are hyping up again the lab leak theory of the virus caused COVID-19, which is totally absurd and arbitrary. Tracing the virus is a matter of science, which should be jointly conducted by scientists all over the world. To politicize the issue will only hinder global cooperation in the study of origins, jeopardize anti-pandemic cooperation, and cost more lives. It would run counter to the international community's aspiration of solidarity against the virus. Virus tracing is also a global mission that should be conducted in multiple countries and localities. The behavior of the US reveal that they are in fact against multilateralism. We believe the WHO China joint study of the origin of the virus, which was concluded in February this year, will give a strong push to global cooperation in this regard. Excuse me. In fact, Bangladesh suffered from unilateral issues such as press freedom and human rights and so on. It is high time that countries around the world should join hands to rediscover multilateralism and say no to unilateralism that is running amok, and resist ideology-based pseudo-multilateralism and so-called international rules defined by only one single country or a few countries. Might have heard that on June 10th, China passed an anti-foreign sanction law which sends out a signal that China has had enough of such Western countries' arbitrary and unilateral sanctions. This is the newest measure that taken by China to defend the spirit of multilateralism. To strengthen cooperation with South Asian countries, China initiated a 6-country cooperation platform involving China, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. With exchanges made at various levels, the latest meeting under this framework was held on April 27th this year at the ministerial level, during which China suggested the establishment of 3 new regional initiatives and received positive responses from the other 5 countries, including Bangladesh. And the 3 initiatives, namely China, South Asia countries emergency supply reserve, China, South Asia countries poverty alleviation cooperative development center, and China, South Asia countries e-commerce cooperation forum for poverty alleviation in rural areas. All the 3 initiatives are not exclusive to only the participating countries of the meeting, but open to all the South Asian countries. They are the latest commitment of China to cooperation in South Asia, and we expect to see more vibrant participation of Bangladesh in future exchanges. Ladies and gentlemen, the centenary of the Communist Party of China is coming soon. Committed to the great cause of Chinese nation, the CPC is showing even stronger vigor and vitality at its 100th anniversary. Building on the completion of this first centenary goal, the Chinese people will embark upon a new journey toward fully building a modern socialist country. The CPC will always stay true to its original aspiration and mission, which is seeking happiness for the Chinese people, rejuvenation for the Chinese nation, and long-lasting peace and development for the world. The CPC, under the leadership of General Secretary Xi Jinping, is ready to work with government and the political parties of Bangladesh to make our strategic partnership of cooperation stronger and more vibrant. The CPC is also ready to work with political parties and people from countries all over the world to build a community with a shared future for mankind. Thank you all.
Well,
Let's
thank you.
give a
Thank
big
you, Ambassador. Thank you, Ambassador, for that very detailed and informative presentation. You have managed to cover an array of areas in our relationship, not just between the 2 countries, which you have under the strategic partnership for cooperation and also on the 5 areas of focus. But you've also given us a bird's eye view of China's role in the global arena. And we are very heartened, all of us, I'm sure, to learn of China's very deep commitment to multilateralism. Thank you very much. I shall now give the floor to the discussants in the order that has been indicated in the program for their initial 7-minute remarks. The CVs are provided, so I shall confine intro to the minimal. The first on my list is Ambassador Shamsher Mobin Chaudhry Bir Bikram, former Foreign Secretary and Ambassador. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Iftihar. Thanks also to the Cosmos Foundation for arranging this event, which I think is extremely timely and very substantive in the current and prevailing situation, or situation that may evolve in the immediate and long-term future. I have had the great privilege of serving in the Bangladesh mission in Beijing in the late 1980s. I was Deputy Chief of Mission and what in Chinese language is called Kunshe in the Bangladesh Embassy. It was a great learning experience for me to see the rise and what was described as a peaceful rise of a country like China, and as it played out right in front of my eyes. The 13th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party was held in 1987, and I was in Beijing to witness and learn from it. So it was a great experience for me. One of the high points of my stay was becoming a very close friend of Ambassador Chichao So, one of China's most distinguished diplomats, who rose from being a stenographer during the Korean War to becoming an Undersecretary General in the United Nations, a great man. The reason why I relate to Chi Chao Su in person, that he basically reflects the passage of China from 1949 to its present position, an upward curve that China has moved over all these decades. I would not like to repeat what has already been said of the history of our relationship. At the beginning, I mentioned the visit of Bangabandhu to China in the 1950s as a member of a political delegation from Pakistan. And he had great impressions about China. He wrote about it also. Sadly, he did not see the establishment of bilateral relations, normal diplomatic relations between China and Bangladesh during his lifetime. Now, Ambassador Lee's eloquent presentation, of course, has given a very detailed status of the relationship between Bangladesh and China, and one can only hope and know for sure that it can only go from strength to strength in the future. I would like to look at it also from a slightly broadly angle, if I may, and to see that we are now living in an era of what we call a multipolar Asia, the emergence of a multipolar Asia, where China, countries like India, Japan play a very major role. And then there is, of course, the centrality of ASEAN. Now, Bangladesh, because of its very wise foreign policy from the very beginning, maintains very close relationships with all of these countries. And this is something which is very helpful to Bangladesh, and I think also very helpful to the countries in the region. Now, geographically, Bangladesh sits on the top of the Bay of Bengal and shares its maritime and land boundaries with India and Myanmar. It is effectively the link in the chain that connects Southeast and South Asia. We are the coupling between these two very important regions in Asia. It is this location that gives Bangladesh its geopolitical relevance and maybe geostrategic relevance too. But it also poses a challenge for Bangladesh as it strives to position itself in this evolving geopolitical scenario and try to preserve and protect her own national interests while maintaining healthy relationship with all the members in the region and beyond. This is a challenge that countries like Bangladesh have to be ready to face and deal with using tact, craft, and vision. On its part, Bangladesh has much to offer, beginning with the fact that it will soon be graduating to a middle-income nation. It is a huge market and it's growing. The country has recorded enviable and consistent economic and social growth in recent time, driven most by increasing exports and foreign remittances. Bangladesh has institutionalized the concept of microfinance, which has helped take millions, mostly women, out of abject poverty and has empowered them socially. The country can rightfully boast of having a secularized society with a sound track record of girls' education and women empowerment. In the area of foreign policy, Bangladesh believes in the concept of using diplomacy as the first line of defense and as the major tool for resolution of disputes. It has been consistent in pursuing mutually beneficial, multilateral, regional, and trans-regional relationship. It has demonstrated its capacity to resolve, to deal firmly with extremism and terrorism. Bangladesh has a sizable military that is professional, has developed a global character, and is widely respected for its disaster management capabilities and for keeping peace under the United Nations in far-off lands. More recently, Bangladesh has earned universal accolades for readily providing shelter to more than 1 million Rohingya refugees fleeing persecution at their own home. Bangladesh has therefore defied skeptics and has earned recognition as a responsible neighbor and a regional player. Now, there are, of course, analysts who want to look at Bangladesh's relationship and Bangladesh's ties with the countries of the region as one of competition between some of the major countries. I think in Bangladesh, I personally certainly view this as a healthy development that can benefit from, that all can benefit from, especially if one fits all the major countries into the equation. For Bangladesh, this is not and has never been an either with me or against me syndrome, far from it. We are aware of the issues that tend to divide some of the countries in the region, but also aware of the issues that unite many of them. And Ambassador Lee has talked of the issue of climate change in this respect. I think it is very, very important that we all keep these factors in mind. We have to work together as we move along. And in this context, Bangladesh's relationship with China is very critical and very important. I also want to maintain here that we believe in enhanced connectivity. We believe in close strategic partnerships, not just bilaterally, but also in the broader Asia-Pacific context. I think Bangladesh has earned itself a position where it can play a very meaningful role and contribute substantially in keeping and ensuring a peaceful and prosperous multipolar Asia. We are in a position to do that. And I think one should keep on working on this in close interactions, exchanges with major players in our region and beyond when it comes to that, because as we say, we have friendship with all. And here the Bangladesh-China relationship also is of great relevance here. Ambassador Lee also mentioned very rightly the issue of Rohingya. We have had many promises and assurances of a satisfactory resolution of this conflict, of this issue. It is a humanitarian issue, which has the potential of becoming a security issue if it is not resolved satisfactorily, keeping in mind the dignity, the honor of this community of people who are facing what the UN described as a textbook case of ethnic cleansing. I think countries that have the leverage to play the right kind of role in finding a solution without any further delay should step up and look to finding a peaceful resolution. My concern is, and my question is, are the Rohingyas victims of regional geopolitics and geostrategic interests? I think that is a question that Bangladesh needs to ask very frankly and candidly with major players in the region. This is an issue that has now become secondary because of the advent of the corona pandemic. But this is a much more humanitarian issue, and I think it has to be faced effectively and timely. The other issue that has come into play is the health security in the light of the advent of the corona pandemic. And we are all victims of it, because this is a virus that doesn't recognize international borders. It makes a distinction between the richer and the poorer countries. All, in their own way, are victims of this. Here, I think, I agree with Ambassador Lee that vaccine nationalism should be replaced by vaccine internationalism. And this is where I think we all have to come and play our role together, because it is there, and I think it is here to stay with us for at least some more time. So the role of countries like China, the West, India, all of them, and multilateralism, which Bangladesh has been consistently committed to since the very, very beginning. We believe in it very, very strongly. I think we have to work together to find it. I will just end my intervention here, thanking thanking all of you, and we look forward to more constructive narratives from the other participants. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ambassador, for those very, very substantive remarks, and also Very interesting comparison, I thought, between the life of the USG, the Korea, and also the passage of time and China's rise itself as a reflection of that. I would now pass the microphone on to the next speaker, who would be Dr. Zhou Yingmeng of the International Studies Institute of the Yunnan University, with a request to bear in mind the time frame, of course. Dr. Zhou, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Honorable Ambassador Li, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Well, thanks for Ambassador Li's excellent and wonderful speech. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to share some of my comments. First, one point I want to share is that Sino-Bangladesh relations developed very fast and currently are at a high level. Since China and Bangladesh established diplomatic ties in 1976, both of our two countries attached great importance on these bilateral relations, and they both benefited a lot from it. And it has been developing very fast, especially in recent years. As we know, at the government level, the high-level visits and the contacts between the two countries are more and more frequent. And at the local government and at the government agencies and parliaments, political parties, armed forces, and then governmental groups who also are intensifying exchanges between these actors. We have established more and more cooperation mechanisms and channels, especially after China proposed the One Belt, One Road initiative, just as Ambassador Li has mentioned those progress has made. China, Bangladesh also actively support this initiative and join it. The Sino-Bangladesh relations allow being on a fast track. Our cooperation has made achievements in many respects. In 1928, my colleagues and I have been to Bangladesh in Dhaka and Chittagong, done a field research program on the program of Chinese-funded companies in Bangladesh. The research finds that many Chinese companies invest in Bangladesh are driven by the opportunities of Belt and Road Initiative. And most Chinese companies, owners and managers see Bangladesh market as promising. In fact, China is now Bangladesh's largest source of foreign direct investment. Most of the investments are going to manufacturing industry and the infrastructure sector, which are important sectors in Bangladesh economic growth and social development. The progress of cooperation is visible in many other aspects. Just as Ambassador Li mentioned in the Power Project program and the infrastructure, construction, and so on. In fact, even in the education aspects, we can find some visible progress in Sino-Bangladesh relations. We can see more and more Bangladesh students going to China study, and also many Chinese students began to study Bangladesh languages. In fact, in my university, after the One Belt, One Road initiative proposed, we built a center named the Center for Bangladesh Studies. And the more Chinese scholars began to pay attention to the Bangladesh studies. So I think those indicators are very good phenomena for the rapid development for Sino-Bangladesh relations. And I think they lay a firm basis for the future of our relations. The second point I want to share is that Sino-Bangladesh relations have a sound basis. They are based on our common goals and mutual benefits. Since the establishment of diplomatic ties, the two countries have always understood and supported each other on issues involving core national interests and major concerns, and to enhance and advance our friendly diplomatic ties and consensus among our people in both countries. The fifth plenary session of 1966 Central Committee in both in October 2020 formulated the long-range objective to basically achieve socialist modernization through the year 2035. And Bangladesh also have formulated its long-range objective that is aiming to become a developed nation by 2040. So we have many common goals, and at the same time, we have, by cooperation, can gain many mutual interests. And in international platform, we also have many platforms to cooperate, such as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. China firmly pursues an independent foreign policy for peace and has always stood for settlement of disputes between countries through dialogue and friendly consultation. And Bangladesh is a responsible member in the United Nations, especially plays an active role in peacekeeping enterprise in the United Nations. And currently, both Chinese and Bangladesh are devoting ourselves to realize the dreams. That is Chinese dream and Solar Bangladesh. Both dreams are people-oriented, just as Ambassador Lee said about the fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. They match well in many aspects to achieve those targets. Both countries will need to develop economy, improve infrastructure, and better people's livelihoods. Thus, we can see that Sino-Bangladesh relations are acquiring a life of their own, driven by our common goals and the mutual benefits. The second point I want to share is that we have great potentials and opportunities to cooperate in the new era. And the future of Sino-Bangladesh relations are very bright. Now we will say that we are living in a global village. That is partly true. And thanks to the development of transportation technology, information technology, and even the language teaching and learning technology, all those developments makes us more connected and networked than ever before in history. At the same time, we are facing many challenges ever before. Just as Ambassador Lee has mentioned, we need to find solutions to mitigate and adapt to climate changes, fight against radicalism, maintain the multilateralism, and maintain the security and stability of global supply chain in economic domains. And there are many other. At the same time, there are many other global issues and opportunities for us to cooperate, such as we can cooperate in the digital economy, financial services, information technology, besides the traditional areas such as infrastructure, traditional trade, and economic cooperation. So with the friendly diplomatic ties, we Chinese and the Bangladeshis have shared our views, opinions, and truly tested friendship. It is the central theme of making Sino-Bangladesh relations stronger. Well, as we celebrated the 47th anniversary of the modern diplomatic ties between Bangladesh and China, the past experience of our cooperation will fill us with the confidence and great expectations to the future of our two nations. And I think we will join our hands and move towards in the future. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zhou, and thank you for making those, taking that interest in this discussion, despite the fact that you are so far away. I have great pleasure now in inviting Dr. Devapriya Bhattacharya to the microphone, distinguished fellow, CPD, former ambassador, currently a very reputed commentator on global politics, economics, and country, of course. Devapriya.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start by thanking my good friend, Inayatullah Khan, the founder of Cosmos Foundation, and his colleagues for organizing this fantastic discussion. And I am privileged to speak under the chairmanship of His Excellency Iftekhar Chaudhry, under whose leadership I have had the privilege of serving as an ambassador in WTO and elsewhere in Geneva and Vienna. I like to commend His Excellency, the Ambassador, Li Jiming, for giving us an excellent overview of the current state of affairs, not only in Sino-Bangla relationship, but also the global circumstances within which we need to situate that relationship and how it is evolving. I fondly agree with his 5 focus points, and I don't intend to repeat all those issues, and very happy to listen to all the distinguished panelists over here. Now, the discussion has been named as Prognosis in the Future. Now, it is said that you can only predict the future if you can build it. So you need to really transform all the potentials into reality in order to build the future we want. I think this particular dialogue will contribute towards that. I will make 3 humble points. One is the current state of economic relationship or partnership between Bangladesh and China. The second one, how do you go forward in taking advantage of the evolving trends? And the last but not least, what should we be careful about whilst doing this first and the second? Let me come on the first point on the state of Bangladesh-China relationship. Bangladesh-China relationship needs to be understood in the global context and also in the regional context, not only in the bilateral context. China is the 2nd largest economy in the world. It has possibly the biggest investable surplus at its disposal. It is a science and technology and intellectual property hub. It is the biggest investor. It hosts the biggest domestic market in the world. And obviously, in terms of geopolitical location, it has a very high strategic value. On the other hand, Bangladesh, you look at a country which is now almost $4 billion economy. If you look at the per capita terms, PPP terms, not per capita, purchasing power parity terms, it is a $1,000 billion economy. 37th now, but it is going up the ladder very fast, crossing many other countries, particularly during this COVID period. And it has become a low middle income country, striving to become a high middle income country by 2041, and is going out of the LDC group, least developed country groups, by 2026. And it is obviously undergoing a significant economic transformation. The question is, the Indo and the Bangladesh-China relationship in this respect, how do they interface? China remains the topmost sources of import for Bangladesh, accounting for almost 25%, including the export processing zone also over there. China had been the topmost investor in Bangladesh in 2018 and 2019. And if you look at the whole exports from Bangladesh, although we have an $11 billion of deficit, but it is growing, particularly the duty-free, quota-free market access opportunity, which has been expanded. Earlier, we used to export 5,000 something odd goods. Now, another 3,000 goods had been added to it. So we can export 8,256 items, which is a great achievement. I will come to the possible extension of that in the coming days. China has also emerged as a big financial investor in Bangladesh. And if you look at even if you look at the 12 major projects which are currently going on, and they will account for almost $2 billion at this moment. And all of them have major infrastructural implication. The first, of course, as the ambassador himself has mentioned, in the power sector. Then the second, also very well noted, the Konnafuli Tunnel. The third one is the sewage treatment plant. The 3 most important projects within the topmost 12 projects which are currently under implementation. Now, the issue over here is that whether which is a debated issue across the world, to what extent this kind of financial flow leads to debt trap for countries like Bangladesh, as it has happened in Sri Lanka. Thankfully, Bangladesh debt remains moderately manageable. It's 40% odd of our GDP, the stock, and only 3% of it, 6% of it is accruable to China. So most of our debt is more to the multinationals. At this moment, it is not to China. But we should also note that the concessional finance is falling, suppliers' credit is increasing, which will increase our debt repayment cost in the future very soon. So if you see the current situation, what we have with the Sino-Bangla relationship, there are three major issues I will highlight here. The first is the trade deficit. We need to cover it up. Although as an economist, I will say bilateral trade deficit is not so important. What is important is the aggregate global trade deficit. But nonetheless, if there are structural issues within the bilateral issues, we need to address them. And duty-free, quota-free market access has to really resolve that particular point as much as possible in the future. The second one, we should be really mindful about the debt repayment issue, although we are comfortable at this stage. But there are projections, including my own work, that beyond 2024, this debt issue may become a challenging point for Bangladesh-China relationship. The third issue, which is there in the current existing relationship, from which I will take the cue to go to the forward-looking issues, is that we have moved from trade to investment. But if you look at the trade, it is still emphasizing the imports. And if you look at the investment, it is very much focusing on the physical infrastructure. The transformation which Bangladesh currently needs as it goes out from the LDC group and looks for socio-economic transformation will need two particular changes in the current state of relationship. The first and foremost is that we would need much more exports diversification, and it has to be based on the on domestic resources, domestic linkages, more retained value added. And the other part is we move from physical infrastructure to social infrastructure. So productivity growth, labor issues will be much more important in the coming days, along with the hardwares as we go. So let me highlight just the headline points of 3 or 4 points. The first and foremost, to do the investment promotion and to look into a diversification of the socio-economic transition in Bangladesh, we should take full advantage of the special economic zone which the government has allocated to the Chinese investors. This is going to have a great signaling effect if the Chinese investor fill it up as fast as possible. We should look at the points why the rate of implementation is relatively slow over there, and we should see how we can expedite that matter. This is the Chinese special economic zone. The second one is about the trade relationship. The trade relationship, we must insist on that the duty-free, quota-free market access extended by China to Bangladesh has to be extended beyond the graduation. Because beyond the graduation, we would still need market access support from our developing partners, including the South-South partners. So China may like to declare that, and it will be a great gesture of goodwill to declare that, announce that the duty-free market access, quota-free access will be available to Bangladesh, at least for the first 9 years after the graduation. European Union and others are being persuaded to do so. An issue on this is on the table at the WTO. Thankfully, China, India, and other southern countries are supporting us over there, the LDC group proposal, and it will be perfectly complementary if China does it at a bilateral basis with us. The third point I would like to say is that it is important that we get China more involved in creating regional and global value chain in Bangladesh. And the Bangladesh and China should be together in the global and regional value chain. A part of the value chain does exist with the apparel sector, but it is time that we move into man-made fiber and other products and look into beyond apparel in these cases, whether it is leather, it is ceramics, or it is IT. So it is time that we look in global value chain with China and Bangladesh as critical partners. In many cases, Bangladesh has the lead. My fourth and possibly the last point over here is market linkages are very important. And here, both the hard and the soft part is important. While the BRI rightly focuses on the physical infrastructure part, we should not forget the softer part of connectivity, whether it is financial flow, whether it is intellectual property right issues. And many of us will argue that Bangladesh and China should now go into trading through RMB, not through dollar, not through euro, but through RMB should become the currency of bilateral trade and a possibility of reinvestment in third countries over there. Colleagues, let me conclude by three, I won't call it stricture, but three things which we need to remember as we give shape to Sino-Bangla relationship and make China the prime partner in the socio-economic transformation of Bangladesh in the next decade. It is very obvious China is well placed to become that. I don't know what exactly the term to use, adjective, whether it is prime, whether it is principal, or it is the lead, but it will become one of the most substantive partner in the relationship in the coming decade, no doubt how we handle it. But in order to handle it right, I will just alert you to 3 issues. The first and foremost issue in these cases would be the importance of data and information. Data, information, and disclosure will be critical in terms of having a transparent, accountable relationship based on equal and mutually beneficial partnership. And data, information, and disclosure of that, creation and disclosure of that should be complemented by creation of a set of ground rules, a set of principles and standards which will ensure protection of labor rights, environmental rights, good governance, competitive procurement mechanism, and many other things. I can tell you that China is moving towards that. If you have the opportunity to read the recent white paper, China's white paper on China, white paper on the its development cooperation in the new era, as it's calls it. It has come out in January this year. Please read that. You will see how China is responding to this particular point in the future, in the coming days as it goes. So we want to capitalize on that. The second point would be, along with that, of course, would be the issue of integration of the thought processes outside the government. This is very important, to invest more in research and science and technological development in both sides, and having the meeting of minds of the leading thought leaders in both sets of countries. Last 2 months back, I have had the privilege of giving a set of lectures at the Beijing Agriculture University, virtually, and I found it terribly, rewarding how the students in China, in Beijing University, were eager to learn about the new challenges of the development cooperation, including the Bangladesh-China relationship. This is something we need to foster very fast. My last and least point, may not be the least point, that Sino-Bangladesh relationship should not get hurt in the crossfire of geopolitics. Our projections suggest that the economic relationship in the coming days will become more and more politicized. Within that politicized economic relationship architecture, how do we really protect the Sino-Bangla relationship on its own ground? And Bangladesh, most importantly, as an equal and a substantive partner, retains its independence of policymaking. Independence of policymaking, the sovereignty of policymaking will be critical for Bangladesh in the coming days over there. Colleagues, Ambassador Iftekhar Chaudhry, thank you for being so indulgent. I wanted to just to make the point that there is a full potential for China-Bangladesh relationship to be a prime mover of the economic, social transformation of Bangladesh in the next decade. But whether we really do that in the right way or not will largely depend upon how we prepare for it, address the prerequisites, and be careful about the pitfalls which lie in our way. I thank Cosmos Foundation for allowing me to vent these ideas today at this moment. Thank you very much, colleagues. Be safe.
Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. That was a tremendously well-structured talk, I think, and your thesis of finally of the cooperation beyond what the present, your suggestions of, say, renminbi as a tool for trade, not just bilaterally but also beyond, are excellent ones, and these must be taken note of. And that is precisely the purpose of discussions such as these, that these ideas come about, float, and we consider them. I have great pleasure now in giving the floor to Dr. Dingsheng Nan. She is Assistant Fellow of the International Institute of International Studies, China. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. It's a great honor to receive the invitation from the Cosmos Foundation. Actually, I feel that our ambassador has already wonderfully explained China's policies and stances. Since I personally focus on the South Asia economies, so I would like to make several points in this aspect. First of all, I want to congratulate our Bangladesh counterparts for your remarkable development achievements, especially during this pandemic. We see Bangladesh still managed to achieve a 6.1% GDP growth rate. And I see your GNP per capita has increased to more than $2,200, and this achievement has already exceeded India. So we firmly believe that in the future, Bangladesh could grow to be the development model across the whole South Asia region. About the economy, China and Bangladesh, we have been friends since establishment. The basis of our friendship lies not only in our diplomatic relations, but also in our mutual understandings in developmental pathways. Since we both initiate our industrialization process from the manufacturing sectors, especially from the RMG sectors. We see China used to produce most of the t-shirts, the toys, and also the shoes for the world. Now we see more and more made in Bangladesh label on these products. Because we have taken similar paths of development, I believe China has a better understandings of the economic needs of Bangladesh. China could actually help in providing the 3 core elements for Bangladesh development, and this has already been explained by our ambassador and also by your excellencies. These 3 core elements are market access, investment, and infrastructure. Concerning the market access, China and Bangladesh, we both follow a path of export-oriented development model. So the market access is most important for our growth. China understands this. This is why our government decides to grant the 97% zero tariff treatment to our Bangladesh exports. As President Chaudhry just mentioned, our country now is transforming to a more transforming our pattern to relying more on our domestic consumption. So in the future, China would be the market demand potential of China would be further developed, which means our country could be a bigger export destination for more countries, including Bangladesh. And also about the infrastructure, based on our experience, the infrastructure buildings, infrastructure facilities, including the power stations, the railways, are crucial to a country's industrial growth, to a country's climbing up along the industrial ladder. So some would say the infrastructure building costs too much for a country, but I would see it's just the opposite. Here I have some data from McKinsey. McKinsey company used to publish a report saying that China has spent 8.6% of its GDP on the construction of physical infrastructures, including the roads, railways, airports, and ports during the year 1992, all till 2013. It's about 20 years. Well, in the meantime, the US, the Western Europe, and Canada, the Western countries only allocates its 2.5% of GDP on infrastructure building. So we believe that this this process helps a lot in for a country like China. We used to be in sharp lack of infrastructure, and this building not only helps in the flow of people, flow of the logistics and economic trade, but also it helps to create a more attractive investment environment for the foreign investors who are becoming more and more interested in investing in China. So this is our experience. And about the social infrastructure, the other professor mentioned, I fully agree with you, because in our profession, the famous India economics, Amartya Sen, he mentioned about the social infrastructure building, but this is mainly about the domestic policy. We, China, we would like to contribute in Bangladesh the social infrastructure building, as long as you do not feel that we are interfere your domestic affairs. About the investment, China has already become Bangladesh the biggest investment source of Bangladesh. I believe as long as the investment climate of Bangladesh keeps improving, more and more Chinese enterprises would come to Bangladesh for business opportunities. After all, we need to find cheaper labor. We need to find more market access to the Western countries. And we are very interested in the special economic zones that Bangladesh government provides to China's entrepreneurs. About the China, the China-US competitions, actually, the US has always been saying that there are economic roots behind this competition. They accuse that China has robbed their working opportunities, especially for the low-level, the manufacturing workers' jobs. I believe our counterparts in Bangladesh could understand more of this problem. Actually, this accusation is not fair, because in the process of globalization, it's not China who decides to invest in China or invest in Bangladesh. It's the U.S. investors who decide to invest in other countries, and it's also these big corporations that earn most of the profits. And also it is about the problem of distribution system. Their system starts to, I don't know, didn't work well. So the grassroots would have so many complaints about the China or other countries, other labor-intensive countries would rob their working opportunities. So in the future, I can't say that with the Trump administration step out and the Biden government take power, that this problem recedes and this accusation doesn't exist in the future. On the contrary, I believe that as long as the Western countries, their economies and their social problems, their government cannot solve the social problems well. So the accusations would spread out from China to other countries who are good at manufacturing business. So in the future, we hope that Bangladesh would, China and Bangladesh would jointly stand out and jointly to pretend the free trade world order on the international. Yes, thank you. I'll end my speech here.
Thank you very much. That was a very well structured presentation, I think, across a broad spectrum of market access. And here I'd like to sort of remind everyone of Dr. Divapur Bhattacharya's urging that preferential treatment be continued beyond
Yes, we
our
understand that.
graduation. Yes, and investment, of course, and infrastructure, both physical and social. Thank you very much. Next on my list is Ambassador Sirajul Islam, former diplomat, currently analyst and commentator. You have the floor.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry, for the excellent way you're conducting this webinar today. We have already heard a number of distinguished speakers speak. Most important of all, it was a privilege and an honor to speak, to hear the Chinese ambassador speak on what is in the context of our bilateral relations, in the context of our foreign and strategic affairs, the most important relations, that is between Bangladesh and China. So from the horse, we have heard from the horse's mouth that the ambassador of China in Bangladesh is speaking, and he has given an excellent, in the context of the topic of the webinar, the prognosis. The prognosis he has given is an excellent one, that Bangladesh and China are on a in an excellent road leading to a very bright future. And some of the, discussants who have spoken before me, especially those who have spoken on the economic context, they have given even a brighter future of the prognosis or the direction in which Bangladesh-China relations are going. But having said that, if we are discussing this in an academic environment, in an university environment, a lot of things that have been said, including those that have been said by the Chinese ambassador, could have been very well received in an academic environment. But we are talking about the relationship in an environment of reality. I have been a diplomat all my life myself. Since 2006, I've retired, and I've been following these issues, not from the standpoint of an academic, but from the standpoint of what I've been taught for the last 30 years. And I've forgotten, it must be 2006, it's 15 years. I have been studying these issues as a realist. So I would like to identify myself, not even remotely as an academic, but primarily as a student of real politics. From that point of view, I see a different perspective to the discussions we have had so far in this webinar today. But before I start, let me begin with where the Chinese ambassador started. He said the relationship with Bangladesh and China goes back long, and he mentioned the name of Atish Dipankar. Atish Dipankar is the conduit between Buddhism as it was ending in India and Buddhism as it spread to the rest of the world. Had there been no Bangladesh, or had there been no Atish Dipankar, perhaps Buddhism would have died in India. It was Atish Dipankar through Bangladesh that nurtured when Buddhism was being totally annihilated in India under the then Indian rulers. It got sanctuary in Bangladesh, then in Nepal, and from thence it went through Tibet to the rest of the world. So there is a deep link between China and Bangladesh if the subject is Buddhism and the spread of Buddhism. The other thing is our Prophet, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had told us, the Muslims who are almost predominantly, Bangladesh is a predominantly Muslim country. We have been told, every Bangladeshi Muslim knows, our Prophet told us, if need be, you go to China for education. So even those days in Saudi Arabia, more from the rest of the world, there in Saudi Arabia, the Prophet Muhammad had advised his disciples, go to China. At that time too, China was, from the perspective of education, was the center of the world. So in that perspective, I'd like to ask the Chinese ambassador a few questions. My first question is, I think as I picked up from his lecture today, as he gave it to us, I don't know, I may be mistaken. He had said something like $74 million be the total quantum of China's investment in Bangladesh. I'd like to know how much in actual dollar terms has China invested in Bangladesh or is proposed to invest in Bangladesh, number one. Number two is, what is the status of the, of the question he raised in that address he made to the diplomatic correspondence of Bangladesh? There he had said we are waiting. He has said China is waiting for a response from the government of Bangladesh to the Tista project that they have proposed to us, which is, by the way, a project worth $1 billion. Today, in 2021, China, India, and Bangladesh, India and China are in an asymmetrical relationship vis-a-vis Bangladesh, and ultimately, what China decides will, to a large extent, is what will take place in Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Well, you've given Ambassador Lee a number of things to reflect on. I will now move to Dr. Rashid Mahmood Titumir. Rashid, you have the floor. Next 7 minutes or so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Scholar Diplomat Dr. Iftekhar Ahmed Choudhury. Thank you so much, Mr. Inayatullah Khan and Cosmos Foundation for organizing the timely dialogue. Honorable Ambassador Lee has eloquently given an excellent perspective. Fellow respected discussants have touched most of the issues. Understanding China is of paramount importance in today's world, particularly in the context of transition of pacifist Asia-Pacific region to a point of strategic significance. China has drawn unprecedented attention. There is a voluminous columns and literature written mostly from liberal and realist lenses. Yet, there is an asymmetry. For example, we could hardly access what independent Chinese scholars write, though there are now some publishers running series authored by Chinese academics. It is also challenging to discern the biases stemming from both sides, given the uniqueness and idiosyncrasies of Western and Chinese notions, amongst other on polity, society, and economics, particularly in the historical trajectories of colonialism, decolonization, and associated implications. Secondly, China is also said to be operated through fables and myths. For example, Chinese aid to Bangladesh displays a tagline, "Bhalobashar nauka pahar baiya chole." That is, the boat of love sails through mountains. Does it have any relevance to the Chinese fable, "The foolish old man removes the mountains," which was also recounted by Chairman Mao Zedong? What is then the interpretation of "Bhalobashar nauka pahar baiya chole" in terms of Sino-Bangladesh relationship from that of what Mao then called for collective action against twins of imperialism and feudalism? We'd like to be enlightened from the Honorable Ambassador. China is one of the oldest civilizations. In modern times, Maoist era laid down the crucial foundation for the later high economic performance. Chairman Mao's military strategic thinking was also apt, as he had said, "When the enemy advances, we retreat, and when the enemy retreats, we pursue." The success of China's sui generis reforms has been preconditioned by its size, the purposeful party, the unique conditions of expanding markets. The paramount leader Deng pursued a strategy of conceal brilliance and cultivate internal strength, while the core leader, President Xi, articulated a dream for China's future. This also relates to the centenarian goals, as Ambassador has said, marking the 100-year anniversaries of the founding of Communist Party and the PRC. Xiaokang, or moderately prosperous society in all aspects, has been achieved in 2021. In 2049, China wants to become, quote, "strong, democratic, civilized, harmonious, and modern socialist country." In that vein, in 2013, China designed BRI, providing China both an institutional and normative framework to guide its policy agenda, as well as a response, learning from the dismantling of Soviet Union due to the encirclement of strategic lines of communication. Coming to the relationship with Bangladesh, as it has been said, it dates back to many centuries. China is Bangladesh's largest trade partner. President Xi's historic visit to Bangladesh culminated to as many as 27 MOUs or deals and commitment of about $24.45 billion investment to Bangladesh. There is much to achieve for Bangladesh by leveraging bilateral relations with China. Such leverage requires an assumption of Bangladesh as a strategic hub of land and sea-based connectivity, including the Bay of Bengal. My research on Sino-Bangladesh relations asks for combining necessary and sufficient conditions for deriving gains. At least there are three necessary conditions for growth and stability. A, production network between the two countries. B, capital invested on risk-sharing basis rather than transfer of risk that may lead to accumulated debt. And C, technology transfer. Would like to be enlightened from the Honorable Ambassador on pragmatic modus operandi in this regard. Realizing potential is also plagued by a number of geostrategic intricacies. Bangladesh doesn't share borders with China. For Bangladesh to join in any connectivity initiative involves a third country. Citing the crisis in Rakhine State as a complex and historic one, China has defended the Myanmar government. India is also competing for influence in Myanmar, and it's critical of BRI. What could be modus vivendi in case of BCIM corridor that plan to connect Kolkata in India? China is credited for identifying the principal aspects of principal contradictions and consequent actions to overcome those. China's foreign policy, as we all know, is evolving, yet it is difficult to discern its multiple identities of a developing country and a would-be largest economy of the world. So is not clear its role in the world order, a spoiler, a sharker, or what it says, quote, peaceful coexistence with differences. What would also be your comment, Mr. Ambassador, to an understanding that China is emerging as a superpower, yet foreign policy apparatus is struggling for, quote, putting meat on the bones? Most importantly, sustenance of a partnership is contingent upon normative legitimacy, which arises out of broad-based social approval across the political spectrum and peoples in both countries. Thank you so much for giving me the floor to raise some questions. Much obliged.
Thank you, Dr. Titumir. Yes, very articulate, very articulate. You have raised the questions, and it is also true that seminars such as this are more designed to raise questions than to actually answer them. Thank you. So now we move on to the final speaker, final discussant on our list, and which would be Ambassador Tariq Karim, former ambassador, diplomat, and also honorary advisor emeritus of the Cosmos Foundation. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me the floor. I would like at the onset, well, good afternoon to everyone, but I would like at the onset to thank Chairman Inayatullah Khan and Cosmos Foundation for inviting me and giving me the privilege to be sharing some of my thoughts on this very important subject. It's a privilege for me and an honor to be sharing this same platform with so many distinguished friends and luminaries. I have been associated and closely associated with China throughout my career. I have served in the triangular competitive world that's today in all the three countries that are in this triangular competition. I was DCM in China from 88 to 91. I was Deputy High Commissioner in India from 84 to 88. I was ambassador to Washington in the early 90s. And I was High Commissioner to India again from 2009 to 2014. And essentially, I hewed to the policy which were laid down by a father of the nation. You maintain friendship with all without taking sides with anyone against anybody else. I've had the closest of relationship with Chinese diplomats, whether I was serving in Washington or in New Delhi or anywhere else. And I've had equally close relations and friendships with Indian and other diplomats wherever else I have served. So this sort of says where I come from. And many of the points that I would have made earlier have already been taken care of That is one of the big advantages or disadvantages of being at the tail end. But it's the big advantage is that I see how many commonalities there are in my thinking with many of them. And perhaps I can reemphasize some of them to focus on how we go forward. First of all, as I've stated, our friendship with anyone, that's where I see Bangladesh coming from and going towards. With anyone or more countries should not be construed by any third or other country as being directed against it. This is the highly competitive world. It might appear that we are doing something with some other country which is directed against the other country, but that should not be, it should not be taken in that spirit. Number two, while we bear friendship towards all, we do not engage in malice towards anyone. Bangladesh will eschew any alliance by anyone against anyone else. It will focus on economic development, cooperation, and trade with all countries in its own national interests. I emphasize that. Whatever we do and whatever any country does is essentially to consolidate, to promote, to project, and to advance its own national interest. And albeit it has to do it in friendship with all countries around it, friendship with countries near and far. We are focused on this because we want to develop our own national resilience and also to develop and banish poverty in our own country. Our attitudes are rooted in the realities of a geomorphology, that is geographic location. We are in a sense India locked, but we are in a larger Asian continent where we are also friends with many other Asian powers, with rising China, which will be very soon the #1 economic power in the world, with Japan, with Korea, and with others. And our policies, our attitude to life is also dictated by the hydromorphological dominated nature of which we are a part. So we will be pragmatic, and the necessity to keep our sovereign independence intact with dignity and self-respect will always underlie whatever we do with other nations near us or far from us. While non-alignment may be fashionable or may not be fashionable in certain quarters in today's world, our political lexicon, our political philosophy will remain more non-aligned, if not neutral, to conflicts between countries with parties who have conflicts with each other, but with whom we have friendship and cooperation. Threats in the 21st century will be more, in my perception, not from traditional threats, but from non-traditional threats. And that, I think, is something that brings everyone together, whether we dislike each other or whether we do not cooperate with each other or whether we share different opinions. It is for everyone's interest, therefore, to cooperate with each other in these common threats. Basically, climate change and global warming, and in its multidimensional fallouts in various degrees to different parties. Pandemics, which is now raging, and this is something with which I have been engaged with when I was doing postgraduate studies in the States, which we thought in those days it was a hypothetical exercise. This was way back in 2005, 2006. That what would the world do if we were struck by a pandemic, which the circumstances in today's globalized world, where time and space are meaningless, makes the spread of pandemics inevitable. And this is probably likely to continue and stay with us for quite some time to come. And probably we will be subject to more pandemics in the near future. And of course, conservation of our freshwater resources and wetlands, and preserving ecological integrity and equilibrium in these commons. China is a very, very advanced economic power. It is a global power in its own right. and it is our neighbor in this continent that we live in. We are aspiring to grow, to develop. We are a small country, but not an inconsequential country. We are a bridging country. We are one of the spans of the two-span bridge which links South Asia with Southeast and East Asia. We are the meeting point of two philosophies, China's looking west and our own looking east. This is where our strength is. We come together in that. I do not see conflicts between different narratives coming and competing in the Bay of Bengal as long as we do not engage in playing one against the other. We are part of both the narratives. We are cooperative partners in BRI. We will also be cooperative partners in any, whether you call it Indo-Pacific or Asia-Pacific initiative that might come, which will help us to build our own economic base, our own development goals will be met, and our people will become more prosperous in the process. There are a number of areas that we can leverage the experience and the advancement that China has achieved. Our founding father was a great admirer of what he saw was happening in China, and that's several decades ago, 5 decades ago or more. And I think that was one of the reasons why even in the early 70s, he reached out, sent special envoy to China. He wanted to establish relationship with China. It happened, and it has grown steadily since a little later than that. Perhaps some of the sectors which China should think of in helping us and in its own interest, as well as augmenting ours, not just the traditional sectors that most people over here would think of, but beyond them. I mean, RMG and some sectors have been mentioned, infrastructure, of course. Yes, we will devote, like China has, a large chunk of our GDP to infrastructure. Let us not forget that the so-called developed countries had already done a huge, devoted a huge chunk of their GDP to infrastructure development before they shifted to other areas. So it's all very well for them to preach to us to do different things when they have already attained it. We are trying to catch up with them. So we will do some of the things replicating the same pathway that they took to get where they are today. That is inevitable, but we can balance it with a number of other things. China has strength, of course, in the energy. It is already in part in Bangladesh, but it might perhaps help us now to develop our clean, renewable energy resources and shift away from hydrocarbon resources. Healthcare, China has a well-advanced healthcare system. It is well advanced in vaccine manufacture. I think production of vaccines, every country today has to move away from an import-oriented policy of vaccines to production capability production of industry in vaccine, because pandemics and epidemics will continue to rage in a world where people are frequently brought together. And we have to be able to withstand that. We need to inoculate or vaccinate at least 65 to 70% of our population, not just nationally or regionally, but globally, to attain a global herd immunity. With the current virus, it has an ability, almost a sentient capacity, to mutate and adapt to whatever host it comes across. It is faster than human ability to produce vaccines to be able to counter it. That is where we need to cooperate on. And maybe China can help us, like we are reaching out to other countries in developing our own vaccine production capacity. Light engineering, I would say China has a huge advantage. Maybe it can help us to develop our own light engineering goals, not just in investment, but also in skill development in order to create employment opportunities. and sharing its experience and technological wisdom on water resources management within our own national boundaries. I learned my first lessons in water basin, river basin management from China in a conversation I was having with the Vice Minister of Water Resources when our own water ministry was visiting. And before the meeting started, it started with one line conversation. I actually asked the question of the Vice Minister, how did China tame its river of sorrows? It was an innocuous question, a sort of icebreaker question. And everyone, including the Secretary of Water Resources at that time was Mr. Shamim Hassan, was puzzled by the answer, one word answer, manpower. And so we said, Excellency, what do you mean by that? And he said, look, this river of sorrows has been a river of sorrows for us, not just for centuries, but for millennia. We would address it in different forms and different segments. It would just bypass it or destroy it. Until we learned that a river is a force of nature, has a personality of its own. And if you want, you can never tame it, but you can try and train it. To train it, you have to do it simultaneously. That means you have to do it from the headwaters to the mouth. And that is how we trained it. And that was when a big illumination came into my mind, that our water resources are shared. We have truncated it and split it according to the Westphalian concept. We need to cooperate. I have been part of a dialogue which involved India, Bangladesh, and China since the 2008 on how do we manage the Brahmaputra River. And I saw a lot of progress happening between 2008 and 2015. After 2015, we have not had any further dialogue. We are as worried about what any of our upper riparians do as they should be worried about the consequences on the lower riparians. We should, I would request China to support us in our efforts to augment regional and sub-regional cooperation on a number of issues which will have consequences for China, and particularly in this, resolving the Rohingya issue, not just in Bangladesh, but particularly in its point of origin, where China has the capacity to help us resolve it. Right now, Myanmar, which is the eastern span of the bridge, which I mentioned, that spans East Asia with South and West Asia, I see that in flames in the center. It is on the point of imploding. And imploding Myanmar will lead to explosions that will not leave any of us untouched. Not China, not Bangladesh, not India, not any of the ASEAN countries. So I would urge them to look afresh at this, use their influence, and make sure that this flame is put out quickly so that their looking west aspirations and our looking east aspirations can actually start moving towards each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador Karim. That was very profound. Okay, we finished our panel, actually. However, I have a couple of, there is an audience, and I have a couple of questions, or a couple of hands raised for questions to be asked. I would request that you keep it brief. And so I'd recognize two, Masood Khan and Shamal Hassan. Is it there? Yes. Okay, I will give the floor to Masood, and both are from Cosmos Foundation. Masood is a DMD, and Shamal is also works in the.
Thank you. I have listened to all the excellent presentations with great interest. Those of our Chinese participants have been most informative. I have a quick question to ask. It is addressed mainly to His Excellency, but any of our Chinese scholars could respond. It has been said in some quarters that Chinese infrastructure projects may create debt burden for partner countries. They referred to the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka as an example. So is a risk that any of the Chinese projects in Bangladesh can create similar problems? Thank you.
Thank you, Masood. I will now recognize Shamal Hassan.
Good afternoon. This is Shumail Hassan. I'm the director of Cosmos Group. Thank you, Your Excellency and distinguished scholars for the extremely interesting roundtable discussion which has been going on. And I had the privilege to learn a lot listening to the scholars. I am with Cosmos Group, and as you're aware that we have been working very closely with a lot of Chinese friends and partners. My question is with regard to technology transfer. By what method does Chinese companies plan to help Bangladeshi counterparts learn from them? In other words, how will technology transfer occur in our cooperation? Either His Excellency, the Ambassador, or any of our Chinese scholars can perhaps answer. Thank you.
Okay, so one was on debt, the other was on technology transfer, how this technology transfer can be effected through the cooperation between Chinese and Bangladeshi companies in the implementation of these projects. Under normal circumstances, we would have had another round of discussions perhaps, but as you can see that we have very much run out of time. So unless someone is really raring to go and ask another question, and in any case, most of the interventions have questions either implicit or even explicitly asked. You've done that. So I would now give the floor for the final remarks by Ambassador Li Zhengming. You may respond to any of the points raised, or you may say something of your own, which will broadly summarize your reactions to the entire discussion. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Well, I think both of the questions are very, very interesting to me, and probably I can try to offer my response to you, and probably the other guests can also add their insights on it. Well, as for the first question, the debt trap, which you just also mentioned, the Sri Lanka's case in Sri Lanka. If I'm not mistaken, I read an article regarding Sri Lanka debt situation. The total Chinese debt account for only less than 8% of the whole debt of this country. And out of these 8% Chinese debt, that much less is regarded or related to Belt and Road projects. So this is number one. Number two is that when we are talking about Chinese debt, probably we should talking about two kinds of debts. One is governmental to governmental, G2G debt, which is normally soft loans, concessional loans with a very, very low interest and very long period of time. So those kind of debts mainly are released to BRI project, BRI related projects. So I don't think if there's any difficulties in this kind of debt, if there is one, then the problem might not be the debt itself, may be something else, because this long period and low interest debt loans. And the other kind is, of course, commercial ones. And then probably the competent authorities of the country should consider in a smart and wise way. And it is the determination of the commercial entities, between commercial entities. So I don't think there's any proof, evidence that China created any debt trap in any country, including Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. Another article I just recently read is just finished repaid all of the Chinese debt, which account for about more than $8 billion, $81 billion also. This is a very, very encouraging news to countries like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. And Bangladesh, I would say, you managed your foreign debt very, very well. And there's no any bad debt so far at all. You have a very, very high credit internationally in terms of international debt. So never worry about that. I think you have an excellent system and you have excellent officials and ministers to take care of that. So never worry about that. Number two question, you mentioned the technology transfer and so on. I can say very responsively that there are more and more technology transfer happening between China and Bangladesh. One example or one evidence I can mention is that, you see, a couple of years before, China never purchased any garment from Bangladesh, which is the #1 export goods of Bangladesh. China never import any couple of years ago. But this year's, you can see a lot of garments, ready-to-wear garment, has been imported from Bangladesh to China. You know, China is the #1 garment exporter, but we import garment, ready-to-wear garment from Bangladesh to China. What happened? Because your garment industry has been upgraded to a higher level. That is why China is keep buying from Bangladesh. That is just one of the examples that you can tell that a lot of technology transfer is happening between our two countries. And I also hope that, you see, these days, China just launched the space station and it is open to the international communities. I think BRI countries could be on top of the list. So I hope that probably someday we can also think about probably China, Bangladesh can work on space technology also. Someday, probably 1 or 2 or even more astronauts trained in China from Bangladesh can also work in the outer space, in the space stations. Why not? So we can have an open mind in that regard. That is my answer to the very good 2 questions. And I also noticed that just now some honorable guests also mentioned the Quad. As many of you might already know that in a specific occasion, I talked about the Quad, and I talked about Quad and Bangladesh. That is because that is a situation we are talking about vaccines and so on. But I was asked by one of the Bangladesh journalists about the possibility of Bangladesh's participation in Quad, which is not the case. As an ambassador to Bangladesh, the first foreign policy lesson I learned is that Bangladesh adheres the idea of friendship to all and the malice to none. So I have full confidence that Bangladesh will not be part of that kind of small clique. That is my full confidence. But when I was asked if you would like to see, do you think this is a good idea for Bangladesh to do so? Of course I will say no. What else can you expect from me? Should I say yes? That would be ridiculous. So that is the story about Quad. Okay, I have full confidence, and China have full confidence on Bangladesh. Bangladesh, I know, will never take part in any small cliques, especially cliques with military or security purposes, because this is the history already told us. Bangladesh will never do that. either this one or that one, including Quad. And also some guests also mentioned the Tista River project. Yes, competent authorities of Bangladesh did propose a proposal to China for Tista River project. But unfortunately, the proposal is too simple. It's not a feasibility study report. It's not a formal project proposal with basic studies and so on. It's not ready yet, I would say. So I said to the relevant authorities in Bangladesh, if the Bangladesh government would like to invite China to be part of this project, please make a more complete feasibility study report. And only after that, we can start to assess it, to make evaluation if China would like to be part of it or not. Because we have to make some feasibility study as well, economically and environmentally, and even geopolitically, I would say. But unfortunately, after today, there's nothing new yet. So we're still having an open mind. If some guest holds the opinion that China should be excluded to this kind of project, that's okay for us, because we are invited. We're not trying to persuade the Bangladesh government that China do it. No, that's not the story. And also some friends mentioned the China-India relationship. Well, I would emphasize that China never take India as a strategic rival. We consider India a good neighbor of China. Historically, we have over 2,000, probably 3,000 years of good relationship with India. And for any Chinese intellectuals like me, we have a special feeling to Indian culture. You see, a lot of Chinese vocabularies, right now, live vocabularies in Chinese language actually can be traced back to some Indian culture. Probably not many people knows that. And our ideology in the Indian culture actually already became part of Chinese traditional culture. So any Chinese intellectual who are well educated, they have a special feeling, a good feeling toward India. That is something untold publicly, probably. But I would say we never take India as a strategic rival. We still hope that the China-India relationship can be improved. And actually, these days, we are still coordinating in BRICS, for example, in China, in Shanghai Organization, for example, in Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and so on. We are still working very, very closely. Yeah. So never imagine that China would like to have any rival attitude toward India. That is not the case. As an ambassador of China to Bangladesh, which is a neighbor of India, I would also emphasize that. I hope that this China-India relationship will be improved. And I'm convinced that it will be improved in the future. So, well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to participate in this kind of a very, very magnificent discussion. And I learned a lot from different guests. And I think it's very, very informative to me and educative to me. And I look forward to this kind of exchanges in the future with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. And thank you for also responding in the way you have done now. The Greeks used to say to ask a question is to know half the answer, but you have filled up with the other half to satisfy the curiosity. It was a tremendous discussion, I think, on the whole, and I would like to thank everyone here for participating and making very useful remarks. What we will do, Enak will speak after me, and he will sort of wrap up by telling you what we intend to do with this tremendous bump of knowledge that we have gathered from these discussions. On the subject itself, I like to believe, as China as a whole, that Mao Zedong's radicalism, I think, and Deng Xiaoping's pragmatism, Hu Jintao's harmonization, and Xi Jinping's China dream, all of these followed a pattern within the larger framework of the revolution that has led to this reawakening of China. Rivers have been mentioned a lot, particularly it was the latter half of this conversation. And I like to believe that China's external policy overall resembles a river that meanders and does not suddenly change course. Bilateral relations with Bangladesh are also fitted into a greater scheme of things and is bound to, I'm happy to note and I'm happy to observe, and I've been very much a part of this as well, will go from strength to strength. China is not a nation in a hurry. As you perhaps know, that asked about the impact of history on the 1789 French Revolution, Premier Zhou Enlai is said to have remarked, "It is too soon to tell." So anyway, thank you very much again. So this part of the webinar or roundtable is over, and I would give the floor now to our host, Mr. Inayatullah Khan, MD of Cosmos Group, to give his final remarks and to close this discussion.
Thank you, Iftikhar Bhai. Well, we have now the end of our roundtable. I can't help resist the opening minute of my interview with Wang Yi, because Ambassador Li Jiming just mentioned that, that China would be having improved ties with India. So at the beginning of my interview, the Vice Minister Wang Yi started by saying that he has started, China has a new policy, foreign policy, and that policy was good neighborly relationship with their neighbors, and India being their neighbor, they would be having a very special tie with India. And my response to that saying was that, where does Bangladesh stand? And his immediate answer was, Bangladesh could be the bridge between India and China. And in fact, I made that as my headline after that interview, for a very, very, I would say, brilliant, presentation. So I'm very happy that today in this seminar, in this roundtable, a lot of things have come up, and we have now a brighter, more clear picture of our relationship, which I'm very hopeful that it will be a very stable, very predictable relationship between Bangladesh and China. So I also wanted to tell that Cosmos Foundation has decided to publish a book on Bangladesh, China, and the title of the book should be Bangladesh and China Towards a Shared Future. So I would request each and every discussant and participant of this seminar to give something in writing within a month's time, and we plan to publish a book which would be kind of a document which would be giving directives for our future foreign policy makers to maintain our relationship. And so I hope you will each and every discussant would be doing that, and we will have another follow-up session on this kind of relationship between Bangladesh and China. And I would like to thank everybody, especially our guests from China, Dr. Zhou Yinming from Yunnan University and Dr. Ning Xingmen from China Institute of International Studies. We are looking for linkages with the Chinese think tanks, and we are in touch with some very prominent think tanks, and we should be able to share some good news with Ambassador Li Jiming about our collaboration, also with Cosmos Foundation and other Chinese think tanks. And I would also like to thank each and every distinguished discussants, Ambassador Tariq Karim, Ambassador Shamshir Mubin Chaudhry, Sirajul Islam, Debopriya Bhattacharya, Dr. Rashid, Mahmoud Titumir, all have done a tremendous job, and everybody has really contributed their best. I would also like to congratulate Cosmos team under Nahar Khan's leadership and Masood Khan's stewardship in making this event a great success. I would also like to thank our chair, Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry, for his dexterous conduct of the deliberations with his characteristic aplomb and flair. Before I wrap up for the day, I would like to make a special request. Of course, I have done that already. I'm not trying to read. Okay, and then I wish everybody good luck and good health, and keep well, and all the best. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye-bye.